he has spoken on the topics faith, family and freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Story Power TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J. Lauren Norris.
Suspicious. Similar between a gum-chewing boy and a cud-chewing cow. And yet, while they're similar, they're different somehow. Oh, yeah, it's the intelligent look on the face of the cow. You're not even going to believe how that's related to what I want to talk about today, but if you're at all curious, if you have a curious mind, stay tuned, because you're going to want to know.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at StoryPowerAcademy.com for leadership development and communication skills training. Subscribe now for access.
There is a retreat coming up that I want you to know about. It's called the Story Power Academy Retreat. This Story Power Retreat is about focusing on your communication skills, taking them to the next level. Discover, develop, draft, deploy, and deliver some of the best stories you've ever learned. You're going to listen, create, connect, relax, and reflect around this beautiful lake scene in Granbury, Texas. It's a chance to rejuvenate and refresh and start over with some of the best training you can possibly imagine around storytelling, leadership, and communication. Join us, get away, and relax. I'm J. Lauren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. You would be amazed at the number of things that distract people from the hard work of thinking. Probably the most critical is the delusion that what they're doing is thinking. They think they're thinking, but they're really not thinking. They think they're learning, but they're really not taking in new information. They believe they're being educated, but they're actually being indoctrinated. Or, worse, they believe the information that they're receiving, that they're consuming, that they're taking in, is actually giving them more information to make decisions from. I shared with some of my elite customers yesterday a very, I don't want to say disturbing because it was very well researched and greatly investigated or invested in, a little piece of content by Tom Bilyeu, the guy from the It Factor podcast. If you have not followed Tom, I would recommend that you do that. I don't remember the name of the podcast that he did. It was just a solo. It wasn't an interview. It was just him teaching. But he was teaching about the impact that AI has in daily thinking. Now, being in the field of communication and leadership myself, I do a lot of research around that as well, old and new research. I study those interesting facts. Others, experts, not Tom specifically in this particular thing, but others have said that the last 4 iterations of the AI modules, the language learning models, have more hallucinations with every improvement. Now, you got to do a little bit of homework to understand what a hallucination is. It's one thing to say the data that was fed into the computer was wrong. Let me pause there for a sidetrack for a moment and say, for the 10 plus years that I was in corporate America, one of the biggest arguments that I ever had with a coworker was when we pulled a daily report and it was supposed to be designed to be an accumulative report, meaning if on day 1 my number is 5, and on day 10, my number is 7, and on day 11, my number is 3. Well, no, it should be 12 at least, because it's adding 5 and 7. Or is it adding 5, which then added 2, which then became maybe 8 the next day, but it can't go from 5 to 7 to 3. There's no way that it does that unless there's a flaw in the table that's gathering the information and putting it into the form that we're using to calculate from. If one of those steps is wrong, then the final output cannot be accurate. It's simply not possible. When you have data coming in that you're counting on to make good decisions, every piece of that information coming in has to be validated, verified, accurate. It has to be provable. And the challenge we have, if the truth is that with every new iteration of AI, we have more hallucinations, then what we know to be true is that with every iteration, there's data in the decision-making process that is inaccurate or worse. It would be one thing to say the data is inaccurate, i.e. the table that it came from was wrong, or the data was transferred from its original source into the algorithm or the computation improperly. What would be worse is if the form knew that the data was corrupted or changed it in the process. That's where we come to this barrier between a hallucination, meaning I misunderstood, misinterpreted the data, and the obvious exposure that we've seen where AI has intentionally deceived and then tried to cover its own tracks by gaslighting, by telling you how you should feel about the misinformation that you have received. Okay, that's an extremely advanced form, not only of communication, but of psychological manipulation. Now, you might think that I just have a bone to pick with AI. I do. I don't trust it. That's just me. That's just my own personal opinion. I don't trust it. I don't trust that it is as altruistic as many would like you to believe. But we only have to go back, 10 years? And we realize that people that created Meta, that created all these other forms of social media tools, even those who created some of the digital devices that we use every day, said from the very beginning, I will not let my children use those devices. Why? Well, because they knew what they were made for. They knew what they were made for. They didn't hypocritically say, hey, I think it's great for everyone. Everyone should use it. They just simply said, hey, this is a profit center. We can make money off of this. And regardless of what the intended outcome was, the process has been that along the way, we have created an entire generation, at least one, maybe 3, generations of people who don't take time to process thought on their own. Victims, slaves, robots, minions, lemmings. These are all words that come to mind of people who, like sheep, follow one another off of a cliff. They get caught up in a certain way of thinking. And what's ironic is that we know enough about the human brain, about leadership skills, about communication skills, about manipulative tactics, that if we get just the right people, we call them influencers. You can have an influencer on a dance floor. You can have an influencer in a local club. You can have an influencer in a social gathering. You can have an influencer that is a global influencer, depending on the size of their voice and the profundity with which they deliver their opinions. You can have an influencer in a group of toddlers who haven't even learned to fully communicate yet. But one of them gets an idea, gets a laugh, everybody's going to mimic them. Why? Because they want to be a part of the in crowd. That's the way the human brain works. That's the way our own internal reward systems work, our own dopamine systems work. There's also this really interesting, for lack of a better term, bypass switch that allows us to emotionally engage in a relationship, and I use the term relationship loosely, to engage in a way where we bypass what's immediately going on around us and we hyper-focus downrange, so to speak. We're looking at things that are not in our immediate space. If you're driving fast down the highway, if you're a motorcycle rider like I am, it's common, and I don't mean driving fast on a motorcycle, while that is also true. If you took driver's ed anytime from the 1970s until yesterday, you've heard the phrase tunnel vision. Tunnel vision is when you're so hyper-focused in one thing that you lose sight of everything around you. It's one of the trainings in law enforcement and special forces and combat zones and as a firefighter. Keep your head on a swivel. Don't get so focused on one thing that you lose sight of everything going around you, because you're entering a danger zone. And as you're coming into that, whether it's driving into traffic, or it's walking into a fire zone, or walking into a combat zone, or walking into an unknown physical threat zone, if you lose your peripheral vision, you're in trouble. And yet, from the day that the television was invented until today, the mechanisms that attach themselves to our mind and our thought processes that cause us to narrowly focus on the thing that we're staring at, whether it's the big box at home, even back to when they were black and white, or it's the little device that you carry around in your hand, whether you're binge watching your favorite television series on whatever your favorite streaming platform is, or you're doom scrolling on your favorite social media platform. The tunnel vision that comes from that has this dangerous relationship to thinking. First of which, it makes it really easy to make the excuse and say, well, I am thinking, I am processing thought. You are. But you're thinking that the thinking you're doing is productive. Oftentimes it's not. In fact, it's not only not productive, it's counterproductive. But did I mention hallucinations? What if there was a potential, okay, I'm just going to come out and say it, there is an intentional process in programming. What makes you look, then keep looking, convert that to watching, and stay watching? What makes you engage and stay engaged? I know you know this because there are advertisements that pop up in your social media feeds for things that you talk about when you're not engaged in your social media feed, because your device is listening. We know this is true. As much as we've been gaslit and told it's not true, we know that it for a fact is true. Your device is always listening. If I simply said her name right now, she would activate and wait for me to ask her a question. I can ignore her all day long. I can speak rudely about her all day long. She doesn't care. She's still eavesdropping. And the minute I say her name, she activates and waits for me to ask a question. I know she's listening right now. There's no question in my mind about it. If I started mentioning purple Crocs, I would love to have some purple Crocs. I don't even wear Crocs. I hate the things. I think they're the silliest shoe ever made. They're floating sandals, floating house shoes that they're not even attractive. I don't like purple Crocs. But I'm willing to bet sometime in the next hour in my social media feed, there's going to be an ad for Crocs. If you think that's unintentional, you're delusional. If you're willing to say, that's intentional, then you have to ask, what's the true intent? Well, the true intent is to make profit. And the way that profit is made is to identify what you want or need and then provide that service, solution, or product to you. That's not hard math. That's been the truth from the dawn of time. If one human has a cow and the other human has vegetables, neither one of them can make a beef stew. But if they come together, if they exchange goods and services, they both can have what they want. That's not real hard math. The way that we go about it is a little bit different. Now, here's where the challenge really comes in. We understand that that process is there. It's valid, it's legitimate, it's intentional. We can agree that it's intentional. But the real question is, what lies on the other side of